Hello and welcome to I Can't Believe It's Not the Mouse, the podcast all about animation not made by the mouse. I'm your host, Octaviano, and today I'm going to be talking about an anime. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about the whole show, not any specific episode, so my general thoughts on the whole series from beginning to end, Dragon Ball Daima. Before we get started, I just want to say, if you're listening to this on YouTube, go ahead and give it a like, subscribe to the channel, feel free to comment, and ring the bell for notifications. Also, if you're on Spotify or just any other podcast site, follow this show on those platforms. Unfortunately, due to his passing last year, this is it. This is the last thing we'll get out of him. For those of you unaware, this is the final show that creator Akira Toriyama was involved with, unless there's some other notes that maybe get to that. As it is him actively being involved, this is it. And in that way, there is a better sweetness to this. It's a beautiful show. I'm going to tell you that right up front. If you're a fan of Dragon Ball, you're going to love this. I know there's some people who are not too big on it just because it's very different from what a lot of Americans have probably gotten used to with Dragon Ball. Like, many people, of course, grew up with Dragon Ball Z. I can't say that I'm any different. But what I can say is that when I was growing up watching Dragon Ball Z, I did get around to watching Dragon Ball right away. Whenever I'd visit Mexico with family, the original Dragon Ball would actually play as well. And then I got onto manga and reading a bunch of that stuff. I know there's probably someone who's going to say, you're saying this stuff wrong. I don't give a shit. Point being is that I was already kind of aware that Dragon Ball wasn't just fighting, which is what a lot of people have gotten used to. Because of the way America represented Dragon Ball Z. Not that it was that far off from what the comics and the original Japanese version of the show was like, but obviously, yeah, their aggressiveness was more in there, and the adventure comedy aspect was kind of toned down for American audiences. So, yeah, those people will probably see this as kind of like a lesser show. I don't know. I mean, it does seem like most people are genuinely positive with this one, but yeah, Dragon Ball Daima, last thing that Toriyama gave us, and it's more adventure based than it is action based. There are fight scenes, that much is still there for those of you who like that stuff, and not that it was never even there to begin with. Dragon Ball had fight stuff in there to begin with. I mean, personally, as a fan of Dragon Ball, I think this, I can't be mad. It's like, it just brings me back to classic Dragon Ball. For those of you who are not aware of what Daima is about, it's basically right after the Buu saga, so before anything from Dragon Ball Super, we start off with these characters that we've never really met before, named Goma, who basically is the new ruler of the demon world. So that was pretty much the big thing that this show does. It finally establishes the demon realm and furthering out the lore with the Namekians and all that stuff. Again, if you're a big Dragon Ball fan, this stuff is going to be just really neat, because the original Dragon Ball already talked about how Piccolo, or King Piccolo really, was a demon, and then we found out that he was a Namekian, and it kind of always created this weird, like, okay, wait, so is he a demon or is he an alien? This is like, okay, they're essentially one and the same. It's basically revealed, like, okay, if you remember Deborah from the Buu saga, he was like the king of demons. Yeah, that whole thing has repercussions here, especially with his death, and as a result, this new ruler doesn't want the Dragon Ball heroes stopping him from becoming all-powerful and ruling the demon realm. So he pretty much decides, like, okay, I'm gonna get rid of this to that as soon as I can, taking their Dragon Balls, because it's established that the Dragon Balls of the demon realm are a lot harder to get. Like, even though everyone knows the locations, we'll get to it, they're harder to get than the ones on Earth. So they go to Earth, and of course with Earth having a dragon that can create 3 wishes for people, that's even more enticing. They add a bit of lore there too, basically reveal that Shenron can only grant multiple wishes for returning users. So new users only get 1 wish, which is kind of funny to think about, that they become so easy to find that people are constantly using them. But, that's cool, and it's a neat little addition. So he basically wishes for all the people who are involved with defeating Buu and any friends and family of theirs to be turned into kids. That is the whole premise, so it pretty much brings Goku, Vegeta, Piccolo, all of them back as little kids, as they have to go on this adventure to, of course, restore their age and stop whatever is going on. And, on top of that, the evil demon ruler, Goma, kidnaps Dende so that they can't just use the Dragon Balls in their world. That's the whole basic premise. They're going on an adventure. They encounter new foes, new friends. We get more lore established from the Namekians because we realized, like, okay, there were demons who basically left the demon realm when things started going bad just so they can find some peace elsewhere. And yeah, that's the whole basis of it. It's cool. We get this new Namekian character called Neva, who's like this very old Namekian who is all powerful. Like, he pretty much can create, like, Dragon Balls and stuff like that. It's all very interesting stuff. Like, I know I'm just essentially recapping what happens in it. Of course, it's a 20 episode show, so there's a lot of ground to cover. I'm not going to go through all of it. I just think that, especially as someone who grew up with Dragon Ball, a lot of the stuff was really interesting, and it really just kind of sparked the imagination of, like, yeah, this is really cool stuff, and I love the way that Toriyama would make this world feel bigger while still adding humor and silliness to it. And even though there's a lot of stuff where it kind of feels like, okay, you just created plot holes, in the end it kind of doesn't matter, because what matters is that the story itself is interesting. I feel like a lot of people who obsess over plot holes always miss out on that. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if a thing has a plot hole or not, and whether or not that thing even affects the lore of the world or whatever. What matters is whether or not you're entertained and whether or not the stuff that you're getting out of it is interesting. If it creates a mistake here and there, if it creates an issue where it just doesn't make sense, why worry about it when you can just enjoy what you're being given? Yeah, that's what I get out of Dragon Ball, and especially out of this. It's just like, so much of this show is just like, yeah, I know that this kind of contradicts stuff that happens in Super, and I know it, even though it answers some questions that I've had for years regarding certain aspects, it still creates some confusing, like, okay, well, then why did this happen or why did that happen? And in the end, it doesn't even matter because it's all good stuff. I do kind of wonder, this is an aside, but I do kind of wonder, though, since they fully established Dabura as the king of demons and the demon realm and all that stuff, if Toriyama was still around, especially with how Sandland has recently started getting, like, it got a show and they started doing some stuff with it. I'm like, I do kind of wonder if maybe there was plans at some point to connect whatever was going to be in Sandland to this, like, not necessarily like, oh, full on like MCU style connection, but like, if you notice that, with some of the other stuff that Toriyama made, they are connected to each other. Like, hey, Dr. Slump eventually made its way to Dragon Ball and it came back on Dragon Ball Super. Dragon Ball Super had Jocko, who, even in the Jocko comic, there was a whole origin story of the Saiyans, specifically Goku, being sent from planet Vegeta all the way down to Earth. I do kind of wonder if there was ever going to be a connection to that here or not. I mean, if you remember in Sandland, Beelzebub's father does look like Dabura. I don't think they ever actually call him Dabura, but you could definitely see it right there. So I wonder if that was ever going to be an established thing. It doesn't matter. This is really just an aside for me. Really cool show. I'm not going to lie, I pretty much was not planning to watch it outside of a few clips, just because I'm like, okay, look, I know that this is available on certain streaming platforms. I got other stuff that I got to get to. But once I finished, I was like, you know what? I really do want to get around to watching this. So let me give it a shot. I mean, I love Dragon Ball, but there's only so much you can do at a time. And even though I do like Toriyama's work, I did kind of wonder, like, okay, is this something I really need to rush to? Like, I've already got enough Dragon Ball stuff in my life. I could probably avoid watching a show if I can do other things. And for what it's worth, when I started watching it, I was like, okay, you know what? I do actually want to see every single episode, following this. So I ended up watching the entire thing within, I want to say, about 4 to 5 days. I mean, of course, that's probably still longer than some, but, again, considering that I got other stuff to do, that's fast for me. Especially considering that I'm not the biggest fan of binging stuff. When it comes to binging, usually I just feel like, okay, I'll watch 2, maybe 3 episodes max, and that's it. I cannot watch a show all that long. Like, I know I've watched 3-hour movies and stuff like that without any issues, but when it comes to shows, I don't know, I just never feel like watching anything all that long. It just gets tiresome real quick, so I try to avoid it. This one, I was like, for the most part, I did kind of had like, okay, here's a little break, here's a little break, but I did get through it faster than I normally would. As a show, I feel like this one is definitely going to be a lot easier to take in than some of the other animes that you probably are used to watching, just because this is very much, let's call it a miniseries. That's all it is. It's not going to be multiple arcs or anything like that. It's just 20 episodes of the story of them trying to become adults again and stopping whatever's going on in the demon world. And that's fine. I kind of wish that we would have that more with some things. I mean, of course, this is a long-running franchise, so it's probably allowed to do something like this. But I do think that when it comes to anime, and this is, of course, becoming a big thing in the US as well with a bunch of streaming shows. Granted, the big difference is that a lot of the streaming shows in the US do not last long because there's not much finances to it. It's one of those things where I'm just like, look, I can't say that I don't enjoy a long-running story, but a lot of stuff uses it as a crutch. And as a result, you get a lot of these shows where at the start of it, it's fine, but then you get to episode, let's just say 70, and you start realizing, if I haven't watched this show from the very beginning, there's a good chance I'm going to be lost on a lot of this stuff, which I know for some people that just sounds like a no-brainer, but really think about it. How many people are going to be committed to watch a show for hundreds of episodes? Not a whole lot. There are going to be people who are just going to be able to casually jump into these things, and you kind of want them to stay in there if you want this franchise or whatever to grow. That's an unfortunate truth to how things work. Not everyone is going to be committed to this. Not everyone is going to treat it like a job where you have to do everything. As a result, I always appreciate it when you can watch something and maybe you won't know everything just because you're not watching it as consistently as everyone else, but you'll still be able to follow along without feeling like you're lost on more than a few things. Anime, unfortunately, and this is very noticeable when it comes to their movies, I've talked about this before, is pretty bad at this. You'll get characters or plot beats and stuff like that that are just going to be introduced in things, and unless you're actually following these stories from beginning to end, you're probably going to get lost, and it just ruins the experience for what essentially is a very interesting story. It's even happened with Dragon Ball, and they've gotten better with it when it comes to like the recent movies and stuff, like pretty much the stuff that Toriyama actually was involved with, where they tried giving you like, okay, here's like a bit of a backstory and let's keep it simple. Dragon Ball Super, I felt like when it came to their stories, they were very well done, just because even though a lot of people didn't like the fact that it was more slice of life or simplified, at the very least it kind of kept it within those arcs, and I never tried doing anything that would make you completely lost if you weren't always following it. It still kind of had that issue occasionally. For the most part, I think Dragon Ball Daima works. Even if you've never actually seen Dragon Ball, you get a good idea of like, okay, these are people who are strong, they fought a demon before, and this new guy running the demon world is afraid of them for that reason. So the whole adventure is about reclaiming what they've lost and stopping the bad guy. Very simple, and it's very fun, and the characters are all there to service this story. Like, of course, there's some characters that you kind of feel like, okay, they don't do enough in the story to really justify their being there. Like, Piccolo is really just there just to give someone to talk to the Namekian, so we can get more of that information out. You got Shin, Supreme Kai, who's really just there just to explain stuff about the demon world that some of the other characters won't do, and that's fine. I know some people will think that that makes them useless to the story. It kind of does, but at the same time, I'm like, look, they still have fun interactions with other characters, and at the very least, it helps make the world richer. Like, it pretty much allows for them to bring up stuff that maybe wouldn't make sense coming from Goku or Vegeta, and I'm perfectly fine with that. The whole thing with them having to get the Dragon Balls from set locations was kind of neat. Like, okay, so we don't have to worry about them looking for a specific spot, because they can just go there. We know that they know the place, and instead what makes them hard to get is the fact that they're all being guarded by these specific guardians for each one that challenge them to a fight and then to a test of knowledge. I love that. Again, it's that goofy Toriyama-ness. It's pretty much like, okay, here's like the cool action stuff, but then just to remind you that Toriyama wasn't just all about the action. He'll start having the characters asking like math questions, and as a result, again, it just makes the world feel richer. It makes them feel more like people, because they're not just mindless drones for action. That they're beings who are like, okay, yeah, we're not just gonna judge you on your, how much you can lift. We're gonna judge you on how much your knowledge shows that you're worthy of these things, and that's I don't know. That's just really neat. Of course, a lot of the people that are going to be talking about the show are probably going to be talking about the fact that at some point Goku goes Super Saiyan 4. I wasn't too surprised by this, just because it feels like within those last few Toriyama stuff, he was trying to get the non-canon stuff that people really liked to be canon. Dragon Ball GT, kind of a mixed bag of a show. I'm not going to lie. It's not all that great. There are some good ideas in there. I like the ending of the show, even though the more and more we got newer Dragon Ball material, the more and more I felt like, okay, I do like the idea of the Dragon Balls going evil and whatnot after many uses. But again, seeing Toriyama's storytelling once again reminded me like it is a cool idea, but at the same time, part of what makes this stuff stand out is that it's not playing like your usual, like the usual tropes of these kind of things. Because the whole, oh, you used a good thing for many years and now it's turning its back on you, is kind of like a common storytelling thing where it's like, okay, the good becomes evil if you overuse it. Again, it's not a bad way to close the story out, but it is something where it's like, looking at the way the show is done, the way the stories are told in this whole continuity, just reminds me that it's kind of pointless to end off on that way, just because it's like, okay, you're doing the traditional thing when this is not the traditional thing. This is kind of a satire on that. It's kind of a parody. It's supposed to be goofy, and not that it can't get serious, but this is playing it too straight and too safe for what it actually is. As a result, I do think that the GT finale is still really good, but it is something where I'm like, yeah, it's gotten weaker as time has gone on. But I know a lot of people still like the Super Saiyan 4 transformation, even though it's kind of useless. So having that be something like, okay, this was done before Super Saiyan God, fine. Okay, I perfectly understand. I do think that it, of course, creates a new plot hole where it's like, well, why didn't that show up in Battle of Gods? But realistically, I just kind of hand wave it as, I don't know, maybe Goku was still trying to master it. Like, of course, even though he reached it, he still hadn't perfected it, because, of course, when it comes to new forms, it's a matter of, like, perfecting how you can use it without losing it right away. That probably still doesn't make any sense, but realistically, who cares? I mean, at the end, it's still about him getting a new transformation at the end of that story. By the point we get to, like, the later stuff, it's like, okay, well, Super Saiyan Blue is stronger than any of this stuff, so why would he even bother doing Super Saiyan 4 if Super Saiyan Blue is much more useful and pretty much, I don't want to say like easier to attain, but much more practical, as we learn in Dragon Ball Super. So I don't really care. I do think that the design on it is neat. I kind of see where people would prefer the design from Dragon Ball GT a little bit more. Like, it's almost the exact same except for the hair. But I don't know. I think the red hair just makes it stand out a little bit more than the black hair. So I don't know. I definitely understand where people would be coming from on that. I think, of course, it makes a little more sense in GT just because he, grows the tail again where he doesn't in this. So it's kind of like, well, why does he, get like the monkey aspects and whatnot? But again, I really don't care too much about that stuff. What matters to me is that it's a very fun time. Goma is a very funny villain. He brings me back to like Pilaf, and of course by the end when he becomes super strong, it's like, it's kind of neat. And I like the fact that it's all strategy based. The real standouts here are because basically the Supreme Kai has two siblings. One is named Degusu, who works with Goma, and another one is a woman named his sister, pretty much named Erensu, who is off on her own story, pretty much. So Degusu is kind of boring. He's kind of forgettable. He pretty much just looks like Shin, So there's like not really much that's all that memorable to him, other than just like, okay, so he's like the right hand man to Goma and he's trying to backstab him. Eren Su is the one that's more fun because she's a woman who, you know, at first we're presented like, okay, she's kind of terrifying, and we kind of find out that she's trying to recreate Majin Buu with the help of the real creator of Majin Buu, because it turns out that Bibbidi never actually created him. Like, he pretty much had the idea for it, but it was another woman who pretty much put in the actual work to create him. Eren Su goes to her, but of course tries to create a Majin Buu who she can control more easily. It turns out that she creates two of them. One is named Majin Ku and the other one's Majin Du, who are both kind of idiots. Majin Ku is just like this very gentle, like he's not even out that strong. Like, he's pretty decent in fighting, but he's pretty much like the weak link. And he's very kind and good-hearted pretty much, because he's like, yeah, I can't win this fight. You won. That was a good fight. I'm proud of you. So that creates a lot of jokes. Whereas Majin Du is like the chubbier, stronger one, who is also kind of an idiot. But in this case, instead of being all nice and proper, he's essentially like a baby. Like, he's, you know, always getting hungry and whatnot. And Majin Ku is just very supportive of him, and that's some of the best stuff in there. Like I said, I just love Toriyama's approach to these things. It's just a very fun time. Like, I know I could go more in depth on this, and maybe I will someday if I do specific episodes of the show. I'm not gonna rule that out, but for what it's worth, I think Dragon Ball Daima is a really good 20-episode run for a show. If you're a fan of Dragon Ball, you'll love it. If you're not a fan of Dragon Ball, I think you can still enjoy it. It does kind of tell you enough that you don't have to go back and watch all the other ones. Like, of course, if you do, it's a much richer experience. But if you don't, you can kind of get the gist of what's going on. On the whole, like, the adventure aspects should hold you up to really, you know, have a blast with it. Whereas if you're a fan of the stuff, you know, the adventure stuff, of course, works, but the lore is what'll make it into a really rich experience. So, I don't know. I definitely recommend it for everyone. You know, Vegeta, of course, is Goku's eternal rival and best friend. Get some really fun stuff with Bulma, his wife. Basically, where it's like, okay, you know, we really do establish that he is a wife guy. I won't ruin the jokes. I mean, if you're a Dragon Ball fan, you probably already heard it because it went all over the place. But if you haven't, I would definitely just watch the show and see those jokes. Right, you know, get your first-hand experience with that. But yeah, Dragon Ball Daima, it's a really good show. I enjoyed it. You'll probably enjoy it. I really, you know, just want to say thank you to Akira Toriyama. You know, once again, rest in peace. I wish he was around to do more stories like this, but as a way to basically send off these characters, so to speak, from the stuff that he was involved with, this was a nice, very sweet swan song from him. Just a beautiful show. I don't know. I had a blast. I can't, you know, I really just feel like I'm recommending it so many times at this point. And yeah, definitely worth a watch if you're into this stuff to any extent. This has been I Can't Believe It's Not the Mouse, and I'll see you again next time. Thanks for stopping by. Go ahead and follow this channel. Subscribe, like and comment, ring the bell for notifications. Go ahead and also follow my podcast and give some love to my Patreon account while you're at it. It's www.patreon.com/saicams. Again, thanks for stopping by, and I hope you come back for more in the future.